very long today, because you know I don't speak for very long, because I've only got one thing to say, right? There we are. All the world is mad. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it. But it is bloody insane. We have a world where people die of hunger in a world of abundance. We have cities of civilians pepper-bombed to protect them. We have Croatia in its political class still thinking of joining the European Union. Manifestation that drastically changes society. Obviously there's a point where people start to see it, and we're at that point now, and this is one of the reasons why people have got on the streets around the world, and they're starting to see that the world's not like they thought it was. Fascism, yes, it's this obvious. Well, it is becoming this obvious now, and that's why people are beginning to see it. But this is the point. I said right at the start, if you're an expert on 9/11 and banking scams and political scams and engineered wars, you're still walking around the outer rim of the rabbit hole. You've not got in yet. So before I get into all that stuff, into the stuff that we're experiencing today in section 3, I want to go very, very deep in the rabbit hole. Not to the bottom or anywhere near yet, but deep in the rabbit hole to see where this experience that we're having in the world, people are shifting into reptilian form. I'll get to that in a second. But the vast number of people have talked about seeing the eyes change. Now I'm not saying this guy's got reptilian eyes, it might be a trick of the light or whatever. It's just something someone said to me. The reason I'm using it is because it brilliantly shows how people describe what they see. Because the eyes shift first before anything else. And I've got a friend who operates in the scientific and the medical arena. And he has an associate who lives in Switzerland, who is, not say associate, an acquaintance, who works out of Switzerland, I think. And he's been doing this, I don't agree with it, mind. He's been doing this research to develop iris scanning technology. Now, his friend had no clue that my friend knew me or anything. Probably never heard of me, I don't know. But what he said to my friend, he said that after looking through a microscope at 2,300 eyes in this iris scan study, the most amazing thing he said, that he couldn't explain, why would he, is that around 4% appear to be of reptilian type and appearance. And if someone, said, look, give us a figure, I'd say about 5% of humanity is this serious hybrid bloodline. So when people talk about the 1% and 99%, it's not far off, really. Now, this is, of course, on the internet. George Bush, again, it was caught on video. I'm not saying his eyes shifted. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, being him, but it could be the light. But again, this is what people describe. And so we are seeing the visible light level of these people, and therefore we're decoding their human energy field. What we're not seeing is what's behind them. There was a magazine in Britain that put that on the front page of their edition to take the piss out of me, and I thought, oh, that's great, I love that, that's good. And it kind of, if you take it to be vibrationally rather than physical, of course, then that's a very good symbol of what it's like. Oh my goodness me. Queen of England, brackets, nobody can shapeshift. And then they did, bloody hell. Oh dear, very, very good to his mother, the Pope, never goes home. And all the time, I emphasize this. These bloodlines have had empathy deleted. And thus, the horrors of the world have no emotional consequence for them. It explains so much. And then, in our face, it's interesting that when you come across something, you suddenly realize how it's been all around us all the time, but we haven't seen it. It's like that when there's a new car come out, and you haven't seen it. And then someone says to you, have you seen that new car? Oh look, there's one. And you look at it, and from then on you keep seeing this bloody new car all the time. Because it's been brought from the subconscious, below threshold, the subliminal, into the conscious mind, and thus the conscious mind is now picking it out every time it's around. Well, it's the same with this reptilian story. Once you get into it, you realize, ancient and modern, how extraordinary, prevalent this whole thing is. Now, again, mainstream anthropology and science and all the rest of it, geology, all the stuff they do, just a little word, you mean America, Britain, France, Germany, and Israel, right? Yeah, okay, we'll say it then. International community says, this is a bad man, so send the boys in, de facto world army, NATO. That's what they want to officially do as a world government and a world army eventually. They want a microchip population, I'll get into that later. Below that, they want a series of unions. There are more than this, just a little selection. They want the European Union, which is of course most advanced. They want an American Union, first of all a North American Union, United States, Canada and Mexico. They want a Pacific Union coming out of the free trade areas, just like the European Union, ASEAN and Icke. And they've got an African Union, evolved out of the Organization of African Unity and other bodies. Under that, they want a Middle East Union and so on, but that's just to give you a feel. And this is the nation states and regions that would be under that edifice of power, and the people would be under that edifice of power. That's what they want. And that's where they're going. So fast. Coordinates too, methods of manipulation. One of the things I'm most pleased about in the 22 years I've been doing this was to come up with a phrase, problem, reaction, solution, because this describes the most effective, most powerful and most used mass-minded emotional technique that is used to push this agenda forward. 9/11 is an absolute classic problem, reaction, solution. In the 33rd degree of Freemasonry, they have a Latin motto, ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos. That is problem, reaction, solution. Create the problem, offer the solution. You want to change society in a way that you know that if you openly suggested it, you'd get a massive reaction against it. So you don't. At stage one, you create a problem, and you then tell to an unquestioning, pathetic, uninvestigating media who could end this bloody sequence immediately if they even got close to the definition of journalist. Through a pathetic media, people are told the version of the event that the authorities tell them. All these years later, with the evidence that the official story of 9/11 is a joke, open any newspaper in the Western world, turn on any bloody major news organisation or radio, and they'll give you the official version. My God! I do children's parties, by the way. So, you covertly correct the problem. Through an unquestioning media, you tell the people the version of the problem you want them to believe, i.e. Bin Laden orchestrated 9/11 from a cave in Afghanistan. I hope he had a good battery on his phone. And then you're looking at stage two for the reaction from the people, of fear, of outrage, and words to the effect of, this can't go on, something must be done, what are they going to do about it? And then those who covertly created the problem, glean that reaction, then openly offer the solutions to the problems they have themselves created. And this, it was a magnificent example. Again, Tony Blair has hardly breathed in his life in a way that I would agree with him. But one thing he did say, because he knew it was true, he said, the world changed on 9/11. Yes, it did. You know why? Because it was bloody meant to. This is one of Obama's major mentors, a guy called not a physics major. Right? Paper passport, I think there's more to know. And a British television team went to them a year later and they asked him about the hijacked passport, and the New York police said, it's a rumour that might be true, quote. Now, they knew it wasn't true, it was a bloody lie, something sent out, it's on my intelligence. Image. Oh, see, honey, it is them Islams, they found one of the passport. Oh my bloody God, that's the level they're working on. And when you control governments, you control intelligence agencies like American intelligence, Mossad, British intelligence, You basically, you control the media ownership level and the way it's bloody reported, because the worst form of censorship is self-censorship, where a journalist knows it's not worth putting that in because it ain't going to get in, or it actually is not going to be looked kindly on for years. So this is what they want to do. Breaking up. And notice the regions are not within a country, they're in different countries, because it's the end of countries. They don't want any countries. Now we get into Europol, where people, the European police force can go into a country and arrest people, and the European army and stuff. And look at it. Do you think that Croatia is going to have any power within this structure of the USSR EU? That, in terms of Croatia, is the longest suicide note in history. Country need to get on their feet and say, we are not having it. Because if you look at what's happening in Europe now, the catastrophe economically, the gathering centralization of bureaucratic power justified by solving the problem. And for Croatia to go into the European Union, or even contemplate it, is akin to standing there, watching a building collapse, and then ask if you can move in. And on your borders, gathering as I speak, is a tidal wave of European regulation dictating to the fine detail of your lives. Fine detail, which you'll become subjected to the moment this whole deal is done. 75%, something like that, of laws that become law in Britain start out now in the European Union. So all this is part of this globalization, the centralization of global power in every area of our lives, including trade. People say to people, you can't be against free trade. Well, let me explain free trade to you, shall I? Okay, what you do is you make your products over here in the poorest countries in the world, or the most enslaved dictatorships in the world, for a few cents on the dollar, while the people making them are paid a pittance, starvation wages, and fantastic shift times. You then ship them over to the West, and you sell them for as much as you can get away with. So both ends of the system are being exploited. Am I against free trade? On that basis, too bloody right I am. And the more that trade barriers come down, the more that tariff barriers and costs of doing that come down. It's all about creating a situation like this, where every single country is dependent on every single country, or on the system, the global system involving every other country. So no one was a near perfect correlation between climate change and the penetration of cosmic rays into Earth's atmosphere throughout history. You don't think. It can't be. The temperature of the Earth can't be affected by the sun, can it? I suppose it could be. Have you noticed? The sun never gets a bloody mention in relation to climate change. Have you noticed that when you walk out and the sun comes out, it warms up? I've noticed that. And even some of the insiders are now breaking ranks. This is a guy called David Evans, a scientist and engineer, full-time or part-time consultant for 11 years to the Australian Greenhouse Office, now the Department of Climate Change. And he said the debate about global warming had reached crazy proportions. He said, this is recently he came out with this. I'm a scientist who was on the carbon gravy train. Understands the evidence, was once an alarmist, but am now a skeptic. He said the whole idea that carbon dioxide is the main cause of recent warming was based on a guess that was proved false by empirical evidence during the 1990s. But the gravy train was too big, with too many jobs, industries, trading profits, political careers, and here we go. The possibility of world government and total control riding on the outcome. I'll get into what that means in a minute. Evans said that the governments and their tame climate scientists now outrageously maintain the fiction that carbon dioxide is a dangerous pollutant, rather than admit they were wrong even when the evidence is overwhelming. And I mean, what we believe, we perceive, and what we perceive, we experience. We are in control. You know, they've done experiments where they've found that when someone has a rigid belief, the neurons in the brain fire off in the same repeating patterns. And what that is an electrical expression of the constantly repeating belief system. And when the belief changes, then the neurons fire off in a different pattern. But if you move to a point where you don't believe anything, you're open to all possibility, and you'll move your fluid perception of what how things are, then the neurons have no pattern to follow. So they're firing off in unique patterns all the time. And thus, that expresses itself in the uniqueness of our life experience. Because if we have a rigid belief, then it will manifest as a vibrational prison. That's why they want us to believe. When we open our minds and get these bloody demon programs out and get the blank sheet of paper, then we can start to deprogram from this bloody nonsense. When we say, I'm not going to perceive my life or reality anymore on the basis of what I've been told by teachers, by scientists, by any bloody body, including that eye cloak, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the blank sheet of paper, and I'm going to now follow the information, I'm going to follow my own feelings, and I'm going where it takes me, not where they have told me I must go. And I can tell you from experience, the adventure begins then. The adventure begins. When we open our hearts too, we start to access that innate intelligence that we call intuition. You know, what changed my life more than anything else was when, just before I had my experience, my turquoise period, I decided, because of the experience I had, all part of the journey, that if ever my head and my intuition were at odds again, I was going to go with this every time. And I've never, ever not done that. Ever, not once. And what happens is, and I kind of am a living example, when you go with your intuition, you're accessing a level, and you're being influenced by a level of consciousness which is beyond what we call mind. It's beyond brain. And therefore it is beyond the perception of reality that the brain, mind, body has. Thus, your intuition is going to take you into things and areas, and it's going to get you saying things and doing things that are going to get mainstream society saying, he's mad, he's a nutter, he's having a midlife crisis, and all that stuff. But if you stick with it, no matter, because what a lot of people do, quite understandably, at that point they go, you know, because at that point the old mind body's go, see what happens when you don't listen to me? I told you. And people go, yeah, okay, I'll go back and conform again. But if you stick with it, I'm a Taurus, I was going to stick with it. I stuck with it, as anyone can. What happens is, eventually, despite all this bloody stuff you had here, it all works out. And it doesn't work out despite that, it works out because of that, and what it gave you. And the brain, the mind, then looks at that over a period, and it starts to see that if you go with your intuition, you go with it, the greater self, although it's at odds with mainstream society, and thus, people are going to think you're crazy, all that stuff, and eventually it all works out. And there comes this point where the brain, the mind, the head, and the heart, the intuition, come together. And so when that happens, it's like the wall ends. It's like the truth goes up and the two become one. And now, when my intuition tells me to do this, my head goes, okay, let's go. There's no wall. It's a wonderful, wonderful feeling. And see, you need, your intuition is your connection to higher levels of awareness beyond this manipulated reality. And it sees a very different picture to what the head sees, and the conscious mind sees at any point. Because as we go through the journey of what we call life, the The conscious mind can only see the next turn on the river. That which your intuition is connected to can see the whole river from source to sea. It knows what's coming round there, you don't. And because of that, it sees experience here as very different to you.